Good afternoon, colleagues. I propose we reopen our session, our midday session. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. This morning we talked about the support for Ukraine. We talked about the enlargement for the European Union. This afternoon we talk about the strategic compass and the European Union resilience. The theme of the session could not be more topical. More than ever, the European Union needs the actual operationalization of the strategic compass, and it remains to be seen whether the horizon of 2030 is not too far, more so whether the objectives are sufficiently focused. The Russian aggression against Ukraine and the threats it poses to the rest of Europe have already been mentioned today more than ever. NATO is a strong security partner, but we face uncertainty within the North Atlantic Alliance. All these factors influence and reinforce each other and mean that there is no simple answer to the difficult questions. The challenges we face require a multidisciplinary approach, of which defense is only one, but obviously a crucial aspect. We are in a crisis situation, and it is precisely in crisis situations that the strength, determination and resilience of an individual, of a country, of an organization is demonstrated. So the challenges we face now undoubtedly present opportunities of similar magnitude. Never waste a good crisis. How will the Union and its member states tackle this? How will it achieve the necessary interoperability, streamline planning, scale up production of equipment and ammunition, secure supplies, secure infrastructure and corridors? Is there sufficient manpower and know-how? And how will the cooperation with our partner NATO evolve? That are all those questions we have to give an answer. I am extremely curious to hear the views of this from the three next speakers here, an excellent panel. For this session, we have invited three experts on the defense issue. First of all, Mrs. Nathalie Loiseau, Chair of the Subcommittee on Security and Defense of the European Parliament, General Robert Brieger, Admiral Michel Hofman, our Chief of Defense in Belgium. If you wish to take the floor, it's the same way as we worked this morning. You can already register your request according to the instructions given by my colleague Els van Hoof. Now, first of all, I will give the floor to Ms. Nathalie Loiseau in her quality of Chair of the Subcommittee on Security and Defense of the European Union. Madame Loiseau, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, cher Peter Boysroge. Vous l'avez dit, il ne pourrait pas y avoir un moment plus approprié pour avoir cette discussion que la période que nous traversons. Ceux qui avaient l'intuition de la nécessité d'une sorte de livre blanc sur la défense européenne, d'une boussole stratégique, n'avaient pas forcément l'intuition qu'il y aurait une guerre d'agression russe en Ukraine. Mais cette boussole est venue à point nommé, et il y a déjà une urgence, c'est celle de la mettre en œuvre complètement pour ne pas nous contenter de discours et de textes, mais pour que la défense européenne puisse vraiment progresser de manière concrète et active. La guerre en Ukraine est évidemment au centre de nos préoccupations et elle doit nous conduire, nous, Européens, à agir plus vite et plus fort pour la défense européenne, pour l'aide à l'Ukraine, mais aussi dans un contexte où nous voyons des États-Unis de plus en plus isolationnistes, quelle que soit la couleur politique de leur président, et le risque est qu'en novembre prochain, nous ayons encore davantage d'incertitudes sur ce plan, ou peut-être la certitude que les États-Unis ont envie de tourner le dos à la priorité européenne. Ce que nous voyons aussi, c'est une attitude systématiquement agressive de la part de la plupart des régimes autoritaires à travers le globe, et nous assistons à un retour en vogue de l'impérialisme. Nous qui, Européens, avions été vaccinés contre ces méfaits, nous avons du mal à comprendre que certains pays sur la planète vivent dans la nostalgie d'un passé fantasmé et pensent qu'on peut remplacer la force du droit par le droit du plus fort. Et nous-mêmes, en Europe, nous sommes la cible d'une guerre hybride. Nous qui ne sommes en guerre avec personne, d'autres ne reculent devant rien pour nous faire une forme de guerre sous le radar. Cette guerre qui passe par les ingérences, qui passe par la manipulation de l'information, par les attaques contre nos infrastructures critiques. Cette guerre a déjà commencé. La Russie en est le principal acteur, mais pas le seul. La guerre hybride est aujourd'hui une réalité et plus une hypothèse, et c'est une autre forme de guerre, mais une guerre tout de même. La manipulation, en particulier la manipulation russe, est devenue une arme de destruction massive de nos démocraties. Cette manipulation atteint même notre Parlement européen, où je suis élue, et elle menace les élections européennes à venir de juin prochain. Il y a quelques semaines, nous avons voté une résolution au Parlement européen qui sonnait l'alerte sur l'ingérence russe dans notre hémicycle, avec des soupçons, des enquêtes qui montrent que cette ingérence n'a jamais cessé et qu'elle se renouvelle. Le Kremlin le dit lui-même, son objectif est de créer un système d'allégeance et de dépendance de certains politiques ou de certains partis politiques qui agissent comme des amplificateurs de sa propagande. Plus récemment encore, nous avons appris qu'un certain nombre de députés européens, j'en fais partie, ou de membres du personnel du Parlement européen, ont vu leur téléphone infecté par des logiciels espions, en l'occurrence Pegasus. Le nombre d'utilisateurs de Pegasus à travers le monde rend impossible la désignation d'une origine ou d'un coupable, mais il nous alerte sur le fait que nous sommes des cibles, que contrairement à ce que disent certains, ce que nous faisons, ce que nous pensons, les positions que nous prenons, pose question et pose problème à un certain nombre de régimes qui n'hésitent pas à avoir des attitudes inamicales vis-à-vis de la démocratie européenne. En tant qu'Européens, il nous revient donc de renforcer notre rôle, non plus de consommateur de sécurité, mais de fournisseur de sécurité pour notre propre continent et pour nos partenaires. Je voudrais me limiter, parce que le temps est lui-même compté, à quelques priorités immédiates, et vous ne serez évidemment pas surpris que je commence par l'Ukraine. Nous devons absolument faire plus, mieux et plus vite pour aider l'Ukraine à défaire la Russie. Ce n'est pas la peine de chercher d'autres mots. Notre intérêt, autant que celui de l'Ukraine, la sécurité de l'Europe passe par une défaite de la Russie, et pour y parvenir, nous devons être capables d'être résilients et de tenir dans la durée. Alors oui, nous avons fait déjà beaucoup, en tout cas beaucoup plus que ce dont nous avions l'habitude. Nous nous étions installés comme des rentiers de la paix depuis l'écroulement du mur de Berlin, depuis la fin de l'Union soviétique. Nous étions confortablement installés dans ce qui nous paraissait être une forme de fin de l'histoire. Heureusement, nous nous sommes réveillés. Heureusement, nous avons agi. Mais il n'y aurait rien de pire au moment où nous parlons que l'autosatisfaction. Il nous faut faire plus, à la fois pour l'Ukraine et pour notre propre défense. La volonté politique, nous l'entendons dans les discours, c'est une bonne chose, mais entre la volonté politique exprimée et celle qui se traduit dans la réalité, il y a évidemment un défi à surmonter qui est le défi du financement. On dit que l'argent est le nerf de la guerre et nous n'avons pas encore surmonté ce défi. Comment financer les ambitions qui sont les nôtres pour l'aide à l'Ukraine et pour le renforcement de nos capacités militaires européennes? Nos budgets sont contraints et les industriels nous le disent, ils produiront autant et aussi vite que nous leur passerons des commandes. Sachant cela, nous ne devons rien nous interdire. Kaja Kallas a parlé de la mise en place d'un fonds de 100 milliards sur la base d'obligations européennes. Écoutons-la et écoutons-la sans tarder. La Banque européenne d'investissement ne peut pas intervenir dans le secteur de la défense parce que les États membres ne lui ont pas donné le mandat de le faire. S'ils ne le font pas maintenant, quand le feront-ils? Le sujet, il est pour aujourd'hui. La taxonomie que nous avons mise en place, environnementale, sociale, a des vertus, mais elle a un énorme désavantage, c'est qu'elle dissuade les institutions financières de financer la défense. Alors clarifions les choses et disons-leur que nous souhaitons une exception stratégique au moment où la guerre est revenue sur le sol européen. Et si nous devons réformer la Facilité européenne pour la paix, alors faisons-le aussi sans tarder, mais sans illusion, tant qu'il n'y a pas derrière des montants financiers substantiels, tout cela ne ressemble qu'à un exercice intellectuel, certes intéressant, mais qui ne correspond pas à l'urgence du moment. Nous avons les moyens de relever ces défis. Nous sommes un continent particulièrement riche. Simplement, jusqu'à maintenant, nous ne nous sommes pas donné les moyens de surmonter ces défis. C'est le moment de le faire. Nous avons réussi à être le continent au monde le mieux protégé contre un virus, la Covid. Tant mieux. Soyons le continent au monde le mieux protégé contre une menace existentielle sur sa sécurité. Si nous l'avons fait pour une maladie, faisons-le pour nos enfants et pour l'avenir de la paix et de la sécurité en Europe. Alors oui, nous avons mis en place des instruments qui sont sans précédent pour acheter des armes et des munitions en commun, pour les produire plus vite. Et c'est un changement au sein de l'Union européenne. Mais dire pas ASAP, ce ne sont pas des objectifs en soi. Ce sont des premières petites briques d'un édifice qui doit nécessairement être très vite beaucoup plus vaste. Nous attendons demain la présentation par la Commission européenne de sa stratégie pour l'investissement de défense en Europe et d'un programme pour l'investissement de défense. Cette annonce est la bienvenue, même si elle est tardive, qu'elle a été reportée à de multiples reprises, en dépit du fait que nous sommes depuis 2 ans face à une guerre d'agression sur le sol européen. Donc j'applaudis à l'avance cette présentation, mais je m'interroge et je vous interroge. Tant qu'il n'y a pas, à côté de cette communication, donc à côté de mots certainement tout à fait valables, un texte législatif en état d'être voté et des moyens financiers en état de mettre en œuvre ces ambitions, ça ne reste que des paroles. Et l'Union européenne a prononcé assez de paroles, maintenant elle doit passer aux actes. Mais ayons conscience que l'instabilité du monde ne se limite pas, et de loin, à l'Ukraine. La Russie elle-même ne se contente pas d'agresser l'Ukraine. Avec ses alliés, elle veille à déstabiliser le reste du monde. Nous l'avons vu au Sahel, au détriment de la sécurité, au détriment des populations locales, au détriment de la lutte contre le terrorisme. Les seuls qui peuvent se féliciter, ce sont les prédateurs en Afrique, qui sont certains de garder le pouvoir grâce à des milices qui s'appelaient Wagner aujourd'hui, qui s'appellent Africa Corps aujourd'hui. La démocratie a perdu, la paix a perdu, et nous avons été, disons-le, mis dehors. Ce qui fait que ceux qui voudraient encore laisser quelques traces d'opérations ou de missions de l'Union européenne au Sahel manquent, de mon point de vue, un peu de dignité et un peu de respect pour les populations sahéliennes. Elles ont laissé faire des coups d'État, peut-être n'étaient-elles pas en état de les empêcher, mais je connais et je respecte suffisamment les populations sahéliennes pour savoir qu'elles voudront retrouver la liberté et la sécurité. Et qu'à ce moment-là, nous devrons être là, mais pas quand des juntes confisquent le pouvoir à leur seul profit. Quand on me dit que nous ne pouvons pas laisser le vide, la Chine, la Russie et d'autres acteurs étaient déjà présents au Sahel alors que nous étions là. Et nous n'avons pas empêché leur action et leur déstabilisation. Ailleurs, c'est aussi encore en Afrique. Notre sous-commission s'est rendue à Djibouti, s'est rendue en Somalie, a vu à la fois le travail de qualité qui a été fait pour lutter contre la piraterie dans l'océan Indien, mais aujourd'hui, cette piraterie revient. Et un nouveau défi se présente à nous avec la situation en mer Rouge, les Houthis étant soutenus par l'Iran, allié de la Russie. Heureusement, nous avons lancé une nouvelle opération et je salue ceux qui ont travaillé à ce que cette opération se déploie rapidement et puisse déjà protéger la liberté de circulation en mer Rouge. Nous en voyons les premiers effets. C'est notre intérêt immédiat compte tenu de l'importance du commerce qui vient vers l'Europe par cette route. Et plus largement, la protection de la liberté de circulation et de navigation est importante pour nous. L'aide aux pays côtiers pour qu'ils arrêtent de faire face à des trafics qui empêchent leur développement doit également être poursuivie. Tout cela n'est, je dirais, qu'un début. Alors veillons à ne pas avoir trop d'appétit ou des ambitions que nous ne serions pas capables de traduire dans la réalité. Mais ce que nous faisons dans le Golfe Guinée, ce que nous pouvons faire comme présence maritime coordonnée en Asie, dans l'Indo-Pacifique, relève de la même logique. La liberté de navigation est une condition indispensable à la prospérité, à la stabilité et à la paix en Europe. Mais face aux ingérences, il nous revient aussi d'agir bien davantage au sein même de l'Union européenne et auprès de nos alliés. Je parle de nos partenaires. J'étais il y a quelques jours en Arménie. Ce pays continue à être menacé à la fois par un Azerbaïdjan irrédentiste, allié de plusieurs pays, Turquie et Pakistan, dont on attend, mais j'ai entendu des propos plutôt positifs du président Erdogan, qu'il travaille à la paix plutôt qu'à réarmer l'Azerbaïdjan, qui ne manque pas d'armes ni de moyens. Ce pays fait l'objet aujourd'hui de tentatives de déstabilisation de la part de la Russie, qui devrait nous alerter tous et nous donner tous pour ambition de défendre une démocratie de plus attaquée pour ce qu'elle est. Un pays démocratique qui fait des réformes, qui lutte contre la corruption et qui regarde de plus en plus vers nous. Ce pays attend beaucoup de nous, nous ne devons pas le décevoir. Même chose pour la Moldavie, encore un pays qui fait l'objet de tentatives de déstabilisation. Nous devons, sur la guerre hybride, apprendre à mieux nous protéger et apprendre à mieux protéger et à mieux coopérer avec nos partenaires, puisqu'à chaque fois, la même histoire se reproduit, celle qui avait commencé en réalité en Ukraine en 2014. Et nous avons vu comment cela s'est terminé. Je suis heureuse que nous ayons cette possibilité, entre Parlement européen et Parlements nationaux, d'échanger sur l'état des lieux et la nécessité qui est la nôtre de renforcer la pertinence et la crédibilité de la défense européenne. Non pas contre l'OTAN, je crois qu'aujourd'hui tout le monde le comprend, en complémentarité avec l'OTAN, et aussi sans avoir honte de parler d'autonomie, le jour où, à chaque fois que les États-Unis ne partagent pas les mêmes urgences que nous, et je ne leur fais pas reproche, ils n'ont pas notre géographie, nous devons être capables aujourd'hui de faire en sorte que nous prenions notre destin en main avec nos alliés à chaque fois que c'est possible et de manière autonome à chaque fois que ce sera nécessaire et sans doute de plus en plus.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Loiseau. The next speaker is an applause. The next speaker is General Robert Brieger, Chairman of the EU Military Committee. General, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would go to start with a simple question. How can we enhance the clout of the European Union? And what is that we have to focus on to strengthen the resilience of our organization tomorrow and today and for the future? I would now like to contribute to this discussion with an additional military insight, but please, I can put your mindset at rest. I will not drift into ancient battles and the lessons identified and learned from that. Nevertheless, my intention is to give you a first brief overview of the security context we find ourselves today in my tenure as representative of the EU Chiefs of Defense. After this, the main point of effort and second part of my intervention will be a focus on my current top 3 priorities and their military implications. Based on these priorities, I will then emphasize the need for assimilation to the new strategic environment in order to show few practical examples that may increase the EU's resilience. One last introductory remark. Please bear with me and understand my contributions today as food for thought, which in the best case will provide impetus for further discussion. As mentioned, in order to identify what the circumstances are today, we have to look back first. It was in 2014 when the Russian regime attacked Ukraine, Crimean Peninsula. At the same time, the United States of America had clearly reoriented themselves towards the Indo-Pacific as part of the rebalance policy, or more hyped Pacific shift. The end of the Afghanistan mission in 2021 heralded the end of NATO's big out-of-area operations, the unipolar world order, and the role of the United States of America as guardian of the rules-based Western system. At the same time, the political and economic confrontation between the United States and China is growing in magnitude and intensity with an impact to our domains. In parallel, we have had to observe a variety of coups d'etat and changes in Africa since 2020-2021, especially in the Sahel region, along with ever more obvious active involvement of third states using to its full extent the hybrid toolbox at their disposal. In February 2022, the Russian regime then attacked Ukraine, which clearly marks a tectonic motion on geopolitics, economy, and the rules-based order in total. But let me mention this: even though we could not believe Putin would challenge the rules-based world order and endanger peace, freedom, and security, we were committing ourselves as EU member states to act. Surprisingly clear in closing the ranks and strong in our common commitments. I claim we were only able to demonstrate these strengths and unity because we created a strategic framework in advance. The clear united perception of the EU materializes by the endorsement of the Strategic Compass in March 2022. Placing a premium on the greater ability to act in support of our enhanced level of ambition against the backdrop of a stark but realistic threat analysis, not only but also in a clear response to Putin's war against Ukraine. From that moment on, the document sets out our common strategic course in spheres of security and defense, listing a flurry of actions and strands of work to be implemented. The new added value of this document is that it captures an analysis of the hostile environment in a 360-degree approach. At the same time, it seeks to bring greater coherence and a strong common sense of purpose to the EU's security and defense efforts. Hence, the foundation for the next steps is set, but strategy is always driven by reality. Derived from recent challenges, there are several short-term strategic priorities that require our immediate attention, not only from a military perspective. Why? Because by reflecting the priorities, we can pragmatically identify the need for action to enhance resilience. The first and most pressing priority in this challenge is the Red Sea. The attack by the Houthi on maritime traffic have a significant impact on European interest, not only the effect of economies for the European Union, but also the deteriorated strategic environment and its spillover effects is unacceptable. As the strategic compass declares, the European Union has a vital interest in the freedom of navigation ensured by a coordinated maritime presence. Therefore, the EU recently launched Operation Aspides in clear response to the Houthi attacks. This reaffirms a significant contribution to maritime security in the Red Sea, but also marks a turning point in the EU's ability to act militarily. For the first time, EU's armed forces are being deployed in a non-permissive environment. This entails a greater risk and a new quality of challenge for our soldiers, but also for the political leadership in Brussels. This results in a necessity for a new quality in cooperation between the military and the politicians in order to face challenges in a non-permissive environment. By setting up tabletop exercises, the political and military bodies will achieve this goal. The second priority is the EU's eastern border, and with that the Ukraine. We are currently in a standoff situation. Of course, the progress of war and conflicts is never clear, predictable. But I think it is badly needed to assume neither party will be able to win this war in short term. A key factor for success is to enhance the European defense industry. And let me be clear, it is not about how much money is spent, but how it is invested. To achieve victory for Ukraine, the political wish to act as long as it takes has to be transformed into an actionable political will based on a unified political strategy. This is a long-term effort that requires political leadership. The third priority is the Sahel region. Instability, humanitarian crisis, and the recent coup d'etat have created enormous potential for further crises and conflicts. At the same time, we have to recognize that the EU is currently stuck in a state of strategic stagnation. Now it is time to find pragmatic solutions in order to keep engaged and relevant in Africa and the Sahel region. As an interim conclusion, I would like to emphasize that all three of these highlighted and very multi-layered priorities have one thing in common. The European Union must strengthen its resilience by reviewing its strategy and enhancing its military capability to act. At the same time, all three priorities require specific strategic amendments. So if we visualize the priority number one, Red Sea, we quickly detect that a resilient organization should be capable of enhancing intelligence structures. A constant determination of the situation is essential in order to make the best possible military decision for deployment of forces. Command and control system, a redundant and resilient command and control structure is highly necessary for every kind of scenario. Credible forces, including a reliable and robust provision of joint force packages and reserves in accordance with the ever-present principle of single set of forces. Stable logistics and support, ammunition and a feasible and pragmatic logistics is essential in all phases of the operation. This includes trained expertise and knowledge about infrastructure, transport and administrative affairs. This enabling function is an integral part of all our efforts. Conducting military operation is in a non-permissive, that means risky, environment. With regard to Ukraine, many requirements to amend can be identified. Among others, the following is highly necessary to strengthen EU's resilience. Increase the capabilities and capacities, a rise of infrastructure measures, military capabilities and capacities for the production and maintenance of ammunition is necessary. Harmonize defense spending, to identify it and harmonize it in order to have the necessary EU-created system available on time. Strategic autonomy, to become a fully fledged defense union which will always act with partners when possible, but also autonomously if needed. A closer look at Africa and the Sahel region also reveals many necessities to amend. Clear political guidance, the European solidarity in the region has to maintain in order not to lose Africa and to make an offer for third parties like Russia and China. As soldiers, we need guidance to plan and act upon. Integrated, holistic approach. Due to the geographically, ethical and religious differences in the African continent, an integrated and holistic approach must take into account the complexity of conflicts, populations and challenges. In doing so, the interaction of civilian and military components is essential. The EU RDC as a framework to swiftly deploy up to 5,000 tailored troops to respond to imminent threats and react to crisis situations. Picking up my initial question, how and in which way strengthen EU and its resilience, let me conclude with the essence of my intervention. Only if we can achieve new quality to act, including enhanced cooperation between the politics, the military and the defense industry, the European Union can remain a credible and resilient global actor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, General. And now the floor is to Admiral Michel Hofman, Belgian Chief of Defense.
Thank you, Mr. Breusroger. It's an honor for me, ladies and gentlemen, to address this esteemed audience today and contribute to discussions surrounding the common foreign and security policy and the common security and defense policy. And I will do that from a national Belgian defense perspective. Allow me first to begin by emphasizing the pivotal role of our democratic institution, both at the European and national levels. The European Parliament and our national parliaments serve as the backbone of our democracies, upholding the core values of our societies and fostering vital connections between the citizens and political leadership. Today, as we navigate through the complexities of the evolving geopolitical landscape, it is imperative that we acknowledge the role of our political leadership in addressing the challenges that threaten our fundamental values and interests. And that is what is at stake now. With the full-scale invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago, we as Western nations got a wake-up call nobody can ignore. The message was apparently clearly understood and further echoed by many political and military leaders at the Munich Security Conference, but also in Kiev during the meeting commemorating 2 years of war. You could interpret those messages as being a call for additional budgets for defense, which is acknowledged by many. But I would invite you to read it as a call for more preparedness. We should indeed prepare ourselves, our armed forces, and our society. And we should get ready now, in peacetime, whilst it is still possible. And in my view, there is an extraordinary opportunity for the European Union. The world around us is changing at an unprecedented pace, presenting us challenges that require a comprehensive, coherent and unified response. In this approach, the support and commitment of governmental departments, civil society organizations, industry, but also from all citizens, become indispensable elements in a concerted and enduring effort to safeguard our way of life. Preparing ourselves for an unpredictable future is not solely a task for our military or intelligence agencies. It transcends the traditional whole-of-government approach and instead calls for a broader, more inclusive strategy, a whole-of-society approach. At the heart of our discussions today lies the dilemma we face in Belgium, but also in many other European countries. The dilemma involves navigating the EU strategic compass amidst the support to Ukraine and the variety of resilience challenges we all face. This encapsulates the multifaceted nature of the security landscape, a landscape that demands both credible deterrence and unwavering resilience. First and foremost, the concept of credible deterrence stands as a cornerstone of our defense strategy. To achieve this, we must bolster our readiness and preparedness at all levels. This entails not only enhancing the capacity of our defense forces, but also ensuring their enablement through modernization and ambitious training initiatives. Being prepared and showing this to our adversaries is the best way to create the desired effect, which is deterrence. And deterrence will be credible if we have robust and capable military forces available, equipped, enabled, interoperable, and if we demonstrate our capacity to deploy and sustain those forces in all corners of our continents or beyond. From a military perspective, our focus must therefore be twofold. First, we must focus on the readiness of the forces, strengthening our forces' capacity through strategic investment in modern equipment and technologies, while enhancing training programs to ensure our troops are prepared for the diverse range of challenges they may face, including in a high-intensity environment. Second, we should focus on building resilience within our forces in order to maintain operational effectiveness in the face of evolving threats and sustainability through robust logistics and support systems. In this context, the European Union's strategic compass is of paramount importance. It offers a comprehensive framework within which we can align our efforts, ensuring coherence and synergy across our defense initiatives. Act, engage, partner, and invest are not hollow concepts. No need to emphasize neither on the complementarity between the strategic compass and the NATO's deterrence and defense of the Euro-Atlantic area, the DDA plans. NATO-EU cooperation should indeed ensure complementarity and avoid unnecessary duplication. As a very tangible objective of the strategic compass, it is of utmost importance to get the EU rapid deployment capacity on track, train it and use it across all different domains, land, air and maritime, of course, but also in the cyber and in space domains. In my view, ASPIDES was an opportunity to test our resolve to stand up an EU RDC, even if it didn't correspond to the operational scenarios that we described. It is an important example of how the EU needs to be ready to protect its vital interests, and we may be proud that this operation was recently launched. Let's admit also, and I might be a little bit more critical, that it took too long to decide and to deploy European Navy ships in theater. There is still work to do when it comes down to the speed of decision-making process if the EU wants to be seen as a credible and reliable security provider. And off the record, we will also have to demonstrate our ability to sustain the effort in time if the situation in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden calls for it. Developing resilience in the maritime domain is an important objective, of course, with our open economies, our dependence on the sea lines of communication, with the vast maritime borders of the European Union, ensuring maritime security is indeed paramount. But to enhance our resilience in the maritime domain, we must invest in technologies and strategies that enhance our ability to monitor and protect our maritime domain, both above and underwater. You will understand, enhancing resilience is not a sole military responsibility. It is a collective responsibility where military and civilian cooperation offers so many opportunities and multiplies the effect and the effectiveness of our efforts. But it is also required in other domains. We need indeed to enhance our resilience against hybrid threats by strengthening our ability to counter those threats. This can be achieved through improved intelligence sharing and response mechanism. This hybrid threat is directly related to the cybersecurity as a critical capability in safeguarding our digital infrastructure and information networks. This was extensively discussed during the dual use seminar organized under the Belgian presidency last week in Ghent. Cyber is everywhere and is a perfect case study for the enhancement of civil-military cooperation. This brings me to another topic where civil-military cooperation is of utmost importance: military mobility. In plain words, this means facilitating the swift movement of troops and equipment across borders, using adequate road and rail infrastructure in order to ensure timely and effective response capabilities. This is a typical domain where EU and NATO can and need to cooperate even more. The EU disposes of financial and legal institutional tools to the benefit of military mobility and can facilitate and enable NATO regional plans. A clearer example of a win-win situation is difficult to find within the realm of security and defense of Europe. In order to tackle all those challenges, we need to reinforce the EU's defense technological and industrial base. A stronger industrial base will not only offer economy of scale, but also provides more options for capability acquisition. From this perspective, I believe that the upcoming EU Commission should expand its support and incentives for reinforcing fast enough our European defense and technological industrial base. I look forward to the EU defense industry strategy, which will be published soon by the Commission. Successful cooperation on this topic will furthermore give long-term perspectives for interoperability and enhanced common strategic culture. And as for military mobility, an increase in military capability of EU member states is also beneficial for NATO. The potential role for the European Investment Bank is leveraging financial mechanisms to support key defense projects and initiatives need probably further consideration. The current security challenges might force us to move beyond dual use and to also finance military-only initiatives. Special times sometimes call for special measures, and our times may well be an example of this expression. Last week, Ursula von der Leyen urged Europe to spend more, spend better, spend European. This only underscores the urgency of our tasks. We'll need indeed to spend more to fill our gaps in ammunition stocks, in spare parts, and fill also some capability gaps. We'll need to spend better to increase our interoperability and create synergy. We'll need also to spend European, realizing though that for some very high-end capabilities, we'll need also to rely on our allies in the United States. Her call highlights the need for collective actions in areas such as joint procurement of military equipment, a European strategy for defense industrial development, and eventually the implication of the European Investment Bank. We, military, have a way to go forward, and this has been assimilated by many nations, but definitely also in Belgium since decades. International cooperation has been a policy for the Belgian defense since very long. The cooperation or integration between the Belgian and Dutch navies is a reality since many years. It has been translated in other domains, like the strategic partnerships between the Belgian and French armies in the land domain, the establishment of a European Air Transport Command where the Belgian airlift capability is embedded, or also the creation of the multinational multi-role tanker transport unit in Eindhoven to fill an important EU capability gap. Other nations have happily been following the example since then. The German-Netherlands Corps is the most prominent form of integration between armies in Western Europe. I'm convinced that Scandinavians or Baltic states will easily find opportunities to spend better. I can assure you that sovereignty has never been an obstacle to develop those initiatives. Those examples demonstrate the benefits of pooling our resources and expertise to achieve greater operational efficiency and effectiveness. They demonstrate our ability to overcome national or even EU reflexes that sometimes stand in the way of creating the desired effect. And I deliberately chose both EU, NATO, and multilateral initiatives with EU and non-EU member states, because in the end, we all aim for the same objective, to increase the security of the citizens in Europe. A dose of Belgian pragmatism and willingness to cooperate might be sometimes good and could help and inspire others. To go forward, it is essential to recognize the pivotal role played by various directorates within the European Commission. Entities such as DG Move, DG Connect, DG Taxit are instrumental in ensuring the seamless coordination of efforts and the implementation of key initiatives. And if I would have a simple request to you, is reduce and simplify bureaucracy. In conclusion, I wish to emphasize that cooperation is not merely a strategic choice. It is imperative. It is a matter of mindset and attitude, requiring us to transcend traditional boundaries and forge new partnerships. Cooperation should be viewed in the broadest sense of the word, encompassing collaboration between EU and partners in NATO, between military and civilian entities, and amongst the nations of Europe. By adopting a holistic approach, a whole-of-society approach, we can harness the collective strength of our societies to confront the challenges ahead. Let us build a future where our resilience is unwavering, our deterrence is credible, and our commitment to the values and peace and security is resolute. Thank you very much for your attention.
Less bureaucracy. I love it, Admiral. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours. We have already a long list of interventions. You know, you have 90 seconds, and I will take it serious, the 90 seconds. Obviously, you have a lot of remarks, a lot of questions, because of the long list. And we start with André Flao. Je commence par André Flao, membre parlementaire de la Belgique. S'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Alors, la réflexion que je viens d'entendre, je la partage, bien entendu, Amiral. Nous, on a effectivement posé une série d'actes concrets pour aller dans le bon sens, puisque l'analyse et le constat que l'on fait, et ce que vous dites, on l'a déjà entendu il y a de très nombreuses années. Heureusement, des choses avancent. Elles avancent trop lentement, sans doute à cause d'une certaine bureaucratie. Et aussi, comment vais-je dire, mais l'idée, par exemple, de la ligne budgétaire européenne pour la défense, c'était une idée il y a longtemps défendue. Mais cette situation aujourd'hui, elle évolue dans un contexte totalement différent. Contexte géopolitique nouveau, de déséquilibre. L'Occident a perdu ou perd son leadership et a peut-être perdu ce leadership à cause de notre attitude. C'est notamment le cas à l'égard de l'Afrique. Et j'ai entendu, Général, que vous avez dit tout à l'heure, nous ne pouvons pas perdre l'Afrique. Je crois que la formule n'est pas nécessairement très heureuse, parce que finalement, aujourd'hui, si l'Afrique se désintéresse de l'Europe et considère que ce que nous faisons en Europe, ce n'est pas son problème, c'est par l'attitude que nous avons eue en certains endroits. J'ai entendu qu'il faut faire bouger les choses, peut-être ne pas dépenser plus, mais dépenser mieux en mutualisant. Simplifier les procédures, même à l'intérieur de nos propres défenses nationales. Et ensuite, je crois qu'il y a un élément important, parce qu'il se posera à nous qui sommes des élus des parlements nationaux, quel choix allons-nous faire quand il faudra arbitrer entre l'augmentation des budgets pour la défense au détriment d'autres dépenses dans le secteur social, par exemple, parce que c'est ce choix que nous aurons à faire et c'est sur ce choix que nos citoyens nous jugeront.
Thank you. Next speaker is from Hungary, Koloman Brenner.
Dankeschön, Herr Präsident. Sehr geehrte Kolleginnen und Kollegen, ich möchte ganz zuerst dann das Verhältnis zwischen der Europäischen Union und der NATO betonen. Nämlich, es ist sehr wichtig, dass wir das nicht als Alternative zueinander auffassen, sondern die beiden Bündnisse ergänzen einander in meinen Augen. Und ich möchte auch in diesem Zusammenhang begrüßen den NATO-Beitritt von unseren finnischen und schwedischen Freunden. Und hierbei möchte ich betonen, dass meine konservative politische Gemeinschaft dies von Anfang an unterstützt hatte. Ich möchte mich auch an General Brieger anknüpfen, der sehr gewissenhaft darauf hingewiesen hat, dass in dieser neuen Zeit einer zweiten Welle der Veränderung der Weltordnung nach 1945, wie ich zu sagen pflege, wir eine bessere Zusammenarbeit und Abstimmung der militärischen und der politischen Ebene brauchen. Diese Prioritäten sind jetzt ganz anders wie nach diesen langen Jahrzehnten des Friedens in Europa. Und es ist unsere gemeinsame Aufgabe, die Verteidigungskapazitäten bis hin in Richtung vielleicht einer gemeinsamen EU-Armee dann besonders fördern und unterstützen. Dankeschön.
Thank you. Now from Austria, Christine Schwarzfuchs.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, the Strategic Compass for Security and Defense is a foundational document and roadmap for actions until 2030 and is of high importance in ensuring our collective security. As Austrian priorities in implementing this compass, we emphasize the role of the European Union as a provider of security through enhancements in military and civilian crisis management, including the establishment of a rapid response force. We advocate for an integrated approach in addressing crises and conflicts and seek to strengthen the European Union cooperation with the United Nations and the OSCE. Furthermore, we aspire for an EU leadership role in areas of disarmament, non-proliferation, and arms control. We are committed to promoting and reinforcing human rights and humanitarian law, as well as implementing the agenda of the UN Resolution 1325. Additionally, we support capacity building efforts in countries outside the European Union, particularly in the Western Balkans. It is up to us to collectively implement these priorities and ensure the security and stability of Europe. The EU can play a crucial role in promoting peace and security worldwide, and Austria will firmly support these efforts. Thank you.
And now from Greece, Stefanos Gikas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, certainly the European Union should adopt to the new strategic environment. This is something that is imperative. According to Strategic Compass, we, the European Union, have, of course, the right to protect its interests. Therefore, and regarding the security situation in the wider Red Sea area, we are particularly concerned by the ongoing Houthi attacks. Greece, as a security provider and an actor of stability in our wider region, is assuming, as you are well aware, the leading role in the new maritime security operation EUNAVFOR Aspides, by providing the operational headquarters in Larissa, as well as one frigate. It is also an opportunity for the EU to increase its international visibility and reconfirm its role as an effective security provider with this operation. Last but not least, we should convey the appropriate public and private messages to the countries of the region that Aspides is purely a defensive operation for safeguarding freedom of navigation and has by no means any offensive purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we're closing the list of interventions, and the next speaker is from Poland, Michał Kobosko.
Thank you, Chair. The recent spy leak of the Bundeswehr high-rank officers' conversation is showing how serious the situation became to all of us. Firstly, that the Russians are listening to us Europeans, and that they are listening very carefully. Secondly, that we and our military are having kind of arms delivery and production capacity conversations that should have taken place long months ago. Time to deliver Taurus missiles and other top-end equipment is now, not in a year or two. Frankly speaking, we are a bit fatigued, but not with the war, but with the constant discussions, if not disputes, among our partners, specifically between our French and German friends regarding who delivered or who declared more aid to Ukraine. We all, or almost all, already did a lot to help Ukraine. But this is simply not enough. Much more needs to be done, firstly to help Ukraine, but secondly to secure our own defense and to strengthen the EU resilience. We welcome several initiatives aiming to increase the ammunition production capacities in Europe, as well as importing ammunition from third countries. The US is there, and will be there whoever becomes the next president of the United States. But Europe cannot fully rely on US protection any longer. Last night we were walking down the beautiful streets of Bruges, and we had these disturbing thoughts among our Polish delegation. You have such an amazing city with amazing history also because you have never experienced the presence of the Soviet or Russian army here. So do whatever you can to avoid their presence in the near future. That's our message. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is from Romania, Georgita Mindruta.
Yes, thank you very much. Romania will continue to be strongly involved in consolidating EU's international profile in the area of security and defense. This should be tailored to the existing needs and the specificity of EU in full synergy with NATO. The commitment to a strong transatlantic connection and the strengthened defense that brings added value to Euro-Atlantic security are fundamental principles for us. Romania strongly supports the intensification of cooperation between the EU and NATO and the expansion of the partnership between the two organizations in accordance with the Third Joint Declaration. A European defense also requires defense capabilities and ability to respond to security challenges and threats. In this context, defense investments are essential. The efforts to provide necessary financial assistance via the European Peace Facility, which has become a critical tool in support of Ukraine and other vulnerable partners, such as the Republic of Moldova, are considerable. The Republic of Moldova remains heavily affected by the Russian war against Ukraine, being also a target of Russia's hybrid war, by using local proxies, weaponizing energy, and using disinformation and propaganda. Romania will engage its transition towards a scalable and modular approach meant to make civilian CSDP more agile, flexible, effective, and efficient. An updated national implementation plan will focus on aligning with the Council's commitment to building and strengthening the EU's role as a global security provider through civilian CSDP missions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maintenant, je passe la parole à Nathalie Pouzireff de la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je parlerai en français. Nous sommes tous d'accord que dans le contexte actuel, nous devons augmenter la capacité de production de nos missiles, de nos munitions. Et je peux vous assurer que la France a triplé ses capacités de production en munitions et a réduit par 2 les délais de production de ses missiles. Et nous faisons tous nos efforts. Je pense que dans cet esprit-là, nous ne pouvons que soutenir la proposition de la Première ministre estonienne Kaja Kallas d'un fonds de 100 milliards qui permettrait d'être un incentive pour nos entreprises pour investir plus dans leur capacité de production, consolider aussi leurs activités avec une ouverture aussi vers les pays du flanc oriental pour produire tous ensemble plus. Ma question porte sur les instruments ASAP, où en est-il, et CARD, qui est un instrument utile de planification à moyen terme. Ensuite, je voudrais ajouter que nous devons avoir des solutions justement pour assurer notre souveraineté européenne, anticiper et maîtriser nos interdépendances par le dérisking sur les composants, sur les matières premières, et enfin, avoir des systèmes de défense interopérables avec l'OTAN. Et c'est pour ça que j'en appelle à renforcer le pilier européen de l'OTAN. Nous avons besoin de leadership en cela, d'unité, davantage d'unité et moins de rivalité pour engager davantage les États-Unis et nos autres partenaires. Et c'est à cette condition-là, notre souveraineté européenne et à la fois notre intégration dans l'OTAN, que nous arriverons à prendre en main notre destin en Europe et pour l'Europe. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Next speaker is Pavel Fischer from Czech Republic.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je vais parler en français. J'ai une question à Nathalie Loiseau à la fin de mon intervention. Nous avons parlé de l'industrie de l'armement et tous les intervenants ont touché là-dessus leurs réflexions. Nous constatons que les volumes de production sont tels que nous avons besoin à ce que non seulement l'industrie se lance, mais aussi les banques commerciales suivent. Et souvent, nos banques, je parle de la République tchèque, sont sous la responsabilité de leurs maires qui siègent à l'extérieur de notre pays. Et là, nous voyons que pour des raisons de réglementation intérieure, les banques commerciales sont gérées par un esprit pacifique, souvent engluées dans un écologisme béat dans lequel elles sont convaincues que plus on se retire de la défense, mieux ça sera. Néanmoins, sur le plan européen, nous voyons que la taxonomie est aujourd'hui déjà ouverte à accompagner l'industrie d'armement. Et ma question, c'est de savoir si le jour où la Banque européenne d'investissement ouvrira son concept, est-ce qu'on peut faire encore davantage sur le plan des parlements nationaux et sur le plan du Parlement européen? Parce que je crois que nous avons un urgent besoin de faire plus. Sinon, nous allons suffoquer notre potentiel d'industrie d'armement. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Next speaker is Gerard Crowell from Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's heartening to see two very senior military personnel and naval personnel here today talking about cooperation. A recent study by the Policy Exchange in the UK spoke of closing the back door and specifically singled out the weak link in Europe, which is Ireland, my home country. And it's not easy to be here talking about the need for cooperation and support. The Atlantic Ocean, which we cover 10 times our landmass with one ship, and I don't believe that's possible. And I'm calling today for what I would call the establishment of an Atlantic fleet that would allow ships from all naval services to patrol the Atlantic from Sagres in South Portugal right up to the Norwegian Sea. That all ships would have the power of arrest within European waters, and the only criteria would be arrested vessels would have to be landed in the nearest port and dealt with by the state that they were brought to. I don't have a lot of time. I want to address very quickly the issue of cybersecurity. 97% of data cables travelled through Irish waters. Just imagine what would happen to our European economy if those cables were compromised, and it's likely that they are already well mapped. On the issue of cybersecurity, I'm calling on the European Union to fund cyber awareness programs 100% for all countries within Europe. Unless we get our population cyber aware, we are constantly vulnerable. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Excellent conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Teresa Scavenius from Denmark.
Thank you. I support the resilience approach to defense politics. I think this broad perspective is really important because one thing is to react to one specific threat, another thing is to avoid threats and to maintain peace. And I think this institution we are in now, this meeting, is one example of how effective the European Union has been in maintaining peace across borders. So our strength lies really in how we live together across borders and make peace stable and possible. But I also strongly support that we have a collaboration of a defense in a military sense, and I think it's really important in terms of understanding the fragile American situation. But I also think, and that's what is part of the discussion already now, is really what type of challenge are we facing? Yes, we have concrete ones which we can answer with military means, but we have also a lot of other types of conflicts. It's about climate change, migration wars, it's the destabilization of a global economic situation, it's information wars, it's hybrid wars, it's attack on satellites, etc. And all these things we need other type of means to address. And therefore, I think it's really important to address the dual-use equipment strategy, that everything that we put money into is also a civil defense. And it's also important that we see security politics also as a way of thinking trade politics, energy politics, agriculture politics, because when we talk about Africa, destabilization in Africa, it's about understanding how our agricultural and trade politics affect African politics. It's about enlargement politics, it's about social politics, so it's really about having this European approach to defense.
Thank you. Next speaker from Croatia is Nikola Mazar.
Poštovani predsjedavajući, kolegice i kolege zastupnici, u strateškom kompasu definirani su naši zajednički prioriteti i konkretne smjernice djelovanja Unije u području sigurnosti i obrane za sljedećih 5 do 10 godina. Hrvatska pozdravlja rezultate postignute u 2 godine provedbe strateškog kompasa kroz provedbu zadaća planiranih u okviru poglavlja Act, Secure, Invest i Partner. Ostvaren je niz zajedničkih pomaka razvoja obrambenih sposobnosti u svim domenama. Učinkovitost u provedbi kompasa će jasno pokazati stupanj jedinstva i strateške kulture Unije i njenih članica, te pridonijeti jačem pozicioniranju Europske unije kao sigurnosnog aktera. Hrvatska je predana provedbi strateškog kompasa, posebno uspostavi snaga za brzo raspoređivanje, kao i unapređenja vojne pokretljivosti na nacionalnoj, europskoj i NATO razini. Posebno naglašavamo važnost vojne pokretljivosti u okviru suradnje EU-NATO, imajući u vidu članstvo mnogih država u obje organizacije i potrebu za usklađivanjem standarda. Svjedoci smo kako u posljednje vrijeme zabilježimo značajno povećanje slučajeva hibridnih prijetnji, kao i brojnih primjera pokušaja dezinformiranja. Daljnja suradnja sa našim strateškim partnerima i partnerima istomišljenicima ključna je kako bi se ponovo uspostavio međunarodni poredak utemeljen na pravilima. U tom pogledu Republika Hrvatska će nastaviti podržavati razvoj suradnje sa strateškim i slično mislećim partnerima poput NATO-a, Sjedinjenih Američkih Država i drugih ključnih partnera. Hvala.
Thank you. Next speaker is from Latvia, Richard Skols.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, it's good that we have the strategic compass and that we're not reviewing, but assessing each year. And I understand 2025 will be the time when we're going to review it entirely. On top of what has been said, and it seems we have narrowed it down only on the military dimension, but it has, as my good Irish colleague mentioned, other important areas of strategy that needs to be implemented. Cyberspace is one of those. The space in general, especially in the light of Russia's announcement that actually they're planning to launch the nuclear weapon in the space. What Europe is going to do with its strategic assets in the space. If that happens, what are our reserve positions on that? And on top of that, I wanted to raise the question on, somebody mentioned Africa, Sahel. We've been calling for years, actually, to sanction Wagner as a terrorist organization. And in the meantime, we see that we pull out, Europe is pulling out from Sahel, and Wagner is taking over and destabilizing the whole region. And on top of that, we have development assistance still in place that should be also an instrument within the strategic compass, how Europe is expressing its influence across the world. And I really applaud a fine example, Sweden, that recently withdrew all the development assistance they had towards Rwanda. And you know why? Because Rwanda was more and more aligning with Russia, and that was the main reason. And I think that should be the policy of the EU as a whole as well when it comes to development assistance, because the world has become black and white. There is no gray area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is from Italy, Nike Gruppioni.
Grazie. Cari colleghi, colleghe, già a partire da marzo 2020, con la pandemia da Covid-19, l'Europa ha affrontato un profondo cambiamento, basato su un nuovo approccio che sembra aprire la strada a future riforme. La sospensione delle regole del patto di stabilità con l'attivazione della clausola di salvaguardia generale, l'approvazione temporanea agli aiuti di Stato, la flessibilità dei fondi europei, l'energica azione della BCE e soprattutto il Next Generation, Unione Europea, lasciano intravedere l'intenzione dell'Europa di tornare ai principi che l'hanno fondata. Un'Europa capace di rafforzare la coesione economica, sociale e territoriale e la solidarietà tra i Paesi dell'Unione Europea. In tale prospettiva ed in considerazione che dall'Ucraina a Gaza le questioni di sicurezza sono diventate sempre più importanti, riteniamo di vitale importanza lavorare sul futuro dell'architettura di sicurezza europea in tutte le sue dimensioni, al fine di rafforzare la politica di sicurezza e di difesa dell'Unione Europea per medio e lungo periodo. Inoltre, l'emergere crescente di Stati autoritari come la Corea del Nord e l'Iran e la destabilizzazione su larga scala in Medio Oriente minacciano seriamente il progetto europeo. Condividiamo pertanto gli obiettivi principali di questo capitolo: disporre entro il 2025 di una capacità di intervento rapido fino a 5.000 unità da utilizzare per la gestione della crisi esterna, nella prospettiva di una politica di difesa e sicurezza comuni di un esercito europeo. Rafforzare le missioni e operazioni PSDC, prevedendo mandati più solidi e promuovendo un processo decisionale più rapido e flessibile. Aspides e la crisi del Mar Rosso ne sono stati un esempio. Devo chiudere. Concludo. L'attuale situazione internazionale sta mettendo in luce l'enorme ritardo dell'Unione Europea in termini di autonomia geopolitica e posizionamento del mondo. Per tale motivo, il rafforzamento della politica estera e di sicurezza, pesca e della politica di sicurezza comune.
Gruppioni. Then the next speaker is from Slovenia, Andrej Poglajen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues and other participants. Today we heard about many threats and solutions about the security and strategic planning and resilience of the European Union, but one thing was not addressed. It's the problem of illegal immigration that's happening on the grounds of EU. When we talk illegal immigration, we must get to the question and proposition and accepted law that was within the Dublin Convention that talks what is an illegal immigration. It's an illegal act. So we saw what even Russia tried to do when they target Polish borders with hordes of illegal immigrants through its proxy Belarus. And thanks to the Poland, we saw that a quick and renounced act is firmly needed when we talk about that problem. Unfortunately, we can see that the European Union is not doing enough on its field. The immigration pact that's in the legislation process right now is not good enough for the other member states to protect ourselves and our countries. When we draw the line, we can see that countries with firmer and stricter immigration policies are safer and have lower rates of crime and other things as well. So when we're talking EU safety, we must first make sure that our member states and our territories are safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is from Georgia, Irakli Beraya.
Thank you, Chair. Security and defense are among key areas of EU-Georgia cooperation, and let me reaffirm our commitment to achieving highest convergence with EU policies and standards. As threats to our shared values grow in number and scale, becoming even more unpredictable, robust military and security capabilities of the EU play a crucial role for our shared security and stability. Georgia has been successfully contributing to EU's peace and stability efforts worldwide, and we seek to further deepen our mutually reinforcing and beneficial partnership. My country has been adapting to deteriorated security environment through bold steps, including but not limited to refining legislative and institutional framework of our defense and resilience, making it more interoperable with EU and NATO, increased defense spending, capabilities to counter hybrid threats, measures to enhance cybersecurity, critical infrastructure protection, and achieve stronger societal resilience. Our robust support will remain instrumental, and EU's robust support will remain instrumental in further strengthening our capacities in all those areas. Furthermore, Russia's aggression against Georgia and Ukraine demonstrates the necessity of firm and consistent strategy on the wider Black Sea security. We look forward to working with the EU on concrete dimensions within strategic compass, including promoting security in the Black Sea, strengthening resilience, upgrading cooperation, encountering hybrid threats, and exploring new cooperation possibilities, such as involving Georgia in PESCO projects. We would also highly welcome increased EU and NATO engagement in the region and their synchronized efforts in Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is from the European Parliament, Javier Nart Penalver.
Hemos hablado de la situación en el Sahel, que es un tema capital para Europa porque es nuestro frente sur. Y en el Sahel el problema principal ha sido Mali. Y en Mali durante muchísimos años hemos tenido una misión de entrenamiento, UTM, que no ha servido para absolutamente nada más que para que gastemos dinero en no formar absolutamente a nadie. Y esa no formación, donde hemos sido incapaces de formar una sola unidad operativa, una sola unidad de tipo compañía incluso, es consecuencia de un mandato castrado que impedía a los militares que estaban en el lugar, en Kulikoró, poder realizar una labor útil. El problema no era de los militares, era de los políticos que dimos un mandato fundamentado en la corrección política. Y lo que es un perfecto escándalo es que cuando se produce en Ucrania una situación parecida, necesidad de proteger nuestro flanco este, en ese momento reaccionamos y damos entrenamiento y armas, cuando en Kulikoró, en un lugar donde se necesitaba un entrenamiento en movilidad, lo dimos en un cuartel cerrado, sin armas y sin municiones. Este es el problema, los mandatos limitados sobre lo políticamente correcto y no sobre lo necesario. Y eso es algo que la Unión Europea debe conocer y comprender.
Thank you. Next speaker is from Montenegro, Nikola Zirojevich. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I must emphasize that I fully agree with the position which seems to me to be generally prevalent at the EU level, that the situation on the global political and thereby on the European soil has completely changed. Although just over 2 years ago we might have been inclined to believe that we would no longer witness horrific war devastation in Europe, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has convinced us otherwise. Today, for more than 2 years, war has been raging on the territory of Europe in a country that is a candidate for EU membership. These events have led to the strengthening of the idea that, despite very close and partnership relations with NATO, the European Union needs a strong own defense system. Today, Europe faces, in addition to the war that still rages in Ukraine, Russian threats of invasion on another candidate country for membership, Moldova. It poses the question, do we have the strength to protect not only Moldova, but also the Balkan states, Montenegro, from which I come, from such or a similar scenario? Such states, talking about the example of Montenegro, especially need protection from hybrid threats. Therefore, unfortunately, we are quite well aware that defense does not only imply mere territory defense, but also a strong fight and protection from hybrid threats, which we are facing more and more each day. In the past 5-6 years, the state from which I come has been particularly exposed to these hybrid influences, and I can freely say that changing the nature of society and its democratic capacity can be just as dangerous as bombs and missiles. Because all of this, I believe that it is of crucial importance that the EU, together with the candidate countries for membership, work on strengthening their own defensive capabilities, which will also result with the contribution to the strength of the NATO, not at all to represent a threat to anyone, but solely and exclusively to be able, if it comes to that, to protect our citizens, our territories, and our values. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is from Turkey, Hulusi Akar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Turkey is an integral part of the Euro-Atlantic security architecture and supports NATO's open door policy and the NATO-EU cooperation. Turkey should be regarded as a key actor contributing to the EU's common security and the defense policy. The EU should not neglect the obligations to fully involve the non-EU allies in its defense-related efforts. EU members must fulfill its commitments to remove obstacles to the export license, defense trade, and the investment among the allies. For example, the A400M planes, by which we used to deliver humanitarian assistance, humanitarian aid to Ukraine, could be used in conflict zones. Regrettably, however, some of our allied countries have suspended the export licenses, for instance, the aircraft engine lubrication systems to Turkey. With regard to the EU strategic compass, a more visionary approach is clearly needed. Because the current document reflects the maximalist claims of some members regarding the Eastern Mediterranean and the maritime boundaries, this document also risks making the EU a part of problem rather than the solution in the Eastern Mediterranean and fails to steer the Union towards the right strategies. Furthermore, we find absolutely unacceptable that Turkey is listed among the challenges in the document alongside Russia and China. Turkey's position towards the EU differs clearly from that of China and Russia. Turkey is never ever a challenge to the EU, just as I said above. It's a security provider in Europe and its neighborhood. Mass misdirection and the counterterrorism are just two examples of this. Also, please remember, we haven't recognized the Russian annexation of Crimea. In closing, we expect the EU to abandon this way of approach, which doesn't support the facilitation of deepening the EU NATO-nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akar. Next speaker is Marit Arnstad from Norway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Norway welcomes the efforts to increase European defense capacity. European countries need to spend more on building up our defenses, and we also need to spend money more wisely to increase the return of investment on defense. We must ensure that all European efforts pull in the same direction. It is vital that the EU initiatives within defense continue to reinforce the European pillar of NATO. We must also ensure that there is no duplication of structures, no discrimination between allies, and no decoupling within NATO. Swedish and Finnish membership of NATO means that the Nordic countries are part of the same security alliance for the first time in 500 years. This represents a new era for Nordic security. It means that we can cooperate in all areas of defense. As a non-EU member, Norway is concerned about institutional barriers being created that could stand in the way for a new and strengthened cooperation between NATO allies.
Thank you. Next speaker is Raimons Bergmanis from Latvia.
Thank you, Chair.
As we adopt the evolving security landscape, the necessity of viewing defense considerations into our infrastructure development is paramount. This approach is not just a strategic choice, it's a directive echoed in the EU strategic compass. The compass clearly identifies the development of strategic infrastructure that serves both civilian and military purpose as a crucial element of our collective security and defense efforts. Rail Baltic is a prime example of this military mobility priority. With Rail Baltic, we aim to finally link the Baltic states with broader Europe through a state-of-the-art railway system, which epitomizes the concept of dual-use infrastructures. Even more, we are building critical infrastructures which will accommodate and serve not only civilian travel and freight transport, but also will massively boost military mobility for the region. We will undoubtedly be seeing more military exercise happening in the region in order to enhance our collective defense, with Finland and Sweden joining NATO. The significant role of Rail Baltic extends beyond the immediate economic benefits. In the current geopolitical context, particularly in light of Russia's aggression in Ukraine, the project stands as a testament to our commitment to enhancing both our connectivity and security. In response, the idea that our infrastructure investment should strategically align with our defense objectives, serving as a backbone for both economic growth and military preparedness. Thank you.
Thank you. Maintenant, je donne la parole à Thibault François, s'il vous plaît, de la France.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Général, Monsieur l'Amiral. 2 ans après le début du conflit en Ukraine qui a été déclenché par la Russie, c'est plus de 31 000 soldats ukrainiens qui ont perdu la vie et plus de 30 000 victimes civiles, ce qui est évidemment beaucoup trop. Emmanuel Macron a quant à lui franchi un nouveau cap, n'excluant pas l'envoi de troupes occidentales au sol en Ukraine. Ces déclarations qui suscitent une évidente inquiétude divisent nos alliés européens, notamment en Europe, l'Allemagne, Espagne, Hongrie, Suède, Pologne, République tchèque, Italie et Slovaquie. Aucun allié ne souhaite envoyer de troupes pour éviter une belligérance évidente avec la Russie et préserver l'intégralité et l'intégrité du territoire de leur propre pays. Même les États-Unis et même l'OTAN l'ont confirmé. C'est un témoignage d'un isolement diplomatique sur la scène internationale et d'un manque évident de consultation de nos alliés actuels. Mais c'est surtout la marque de l'impossibilité de mettre en place une armée commune européenne, et Dieu merci, tant les intérêts nationaux sont divergents et évidemment différents en termes de diplomatie et d'échanges internationaux. Cette déclaration stratégiquement non ambiguë du président de la République française représente une menace importante pour la sécurité européenne et peut faire planer le risque d'une escalade dont personne ne veut. Par conséquent, et ce sont mes questions, comment évaluez-vous la crédibilité de ces déclarations d'envoi de troupes par la France sans alliés sur place? Et quels sont les risques, selon vous, d'une escalade du conflit suite à ces déclarations du président de la République? Je vous remercie.
Merci. And the last intervention is from Greece, Evangelos Apostellakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear delegate, the crisis management capacity of the EU is more than ever needed in order to better and efficiently react to the continuous threats the Union faces with regards to its common security and defense policy, has gradually moving from crisis containment to a more structural and long-term approach to global challenges. Greece welcomes to the EU initiatives aiming to address and counter existing hybrid threats through the hybrid toolbox, the FIMI toolbox and the cyber diplomacy toolbox, respectively. However, have there been any recent developments regarding the inclusion of the instrumentation of migrants into the category of hybrid threats? Given the current geopolitical situation in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East, as well as the policy of our neighborhood country, Greece stressed out the need of incorporating the instrumentalization of migrants into the most prominent hybrid threats it encounters. Irregular migration from Turkey constitutes an issue of great concern. Its effects are felt not only in Greece, but in the most EU countries too. We also welcome the Belgian presidency commitment to fulfill any legislative gaps associated with the new European part on migration and asylum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for the interventions. And there are a lot of questions, a lot of remarks. And now I will give the floor to our experts to give answers and to inspire us. First of all, je donne la parole à Madame Loiseau, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais essayer de me concentrer en rassemblant les remarques et les questions par thème pour ne pas prendre trop de temps. Plusieurs d'entre vous avaient parlé de l'Afrique à juste titre, même si on ne devrait pas dire l'Afrique, mais les Afriques, où regardez chaque sous-région avec sa spécificité. Plusieurs d'entre vous avaient regretté une attention insuffisante portée par l'Europe aux crises africaines, et je ne peux qu'aller dans ce sens. Alors, il est aussi facile à certains dirigeants de nous parler de deux poids, deux mesures, mais objectivement, chaque continent regarde d'abord la guerre à sa porte avant de regarder celle qui est un peu plus loin. Et nous sommes tous coupables de deux poids, deux mesures. Cela signifie tout simplement la subjectivité liée à nos histoires et à nos géographies. Plusieurs d'entre vous ont aussi souhaité une meilleure approche intégrée de notre politique vis-à-vis de l'Afrique, et je ne peux qu'aller dans leur sens. Il ne peut pas y avoir de développement sans sécurité et sans bonne gouvernance. À chaque fois que l'on a voulu travailler ces trois piliers séparément, on s'est heurté à des difficultés et finalement on a échoué et on n'a pas rendu service aux populations que nous croyons aider. Et de ce point de vue, aider des dictateurs est rarement une manière d'aider des populations. Javier Nart a considéré que ce qui se passait au Mali était la faute de l'Europe. Non. Non, et le parallèle avec l'Ukraine me paraît totalement non pertinent. D'abord parce que nous sommes allés au Mali à la demande des autorités maliennes et nous en sommes repartis à leur demande. Nous aidons l'Ukraine à sa demande à elle. Aussi parce qu'au Mali, nous n'avons pas fait qu'une petite mission de formation EUTM Mali. Il y avait la présence non seulement de mon pays d'origine, mais d'autres pays européens dans la task force Takuba. Nous avons apporté une aide substantielle, mais il y avait en sous-main un effort substantiel de la Russie à travers Wagner pour nous faire partir du Sahel. Ne renversons pas la faute et nous ne jetons pas des cendres sur nous-mêmes. Ce n'est pas parce qu'une junte fait le choix d'une milice sanguinaire qu'il faut prendre le parti de cette junte et de cette milice. André Flau a posé la question de savoir comment faire les bons choix budgétaires, sachant que nous sommes évidemment confrontés à beaucoup de nécessités, beaucoup de défis. Nous les avons faits pendant la guerre froide. Nous n'avions pas moins de nécessités, pas moins de défis à traiter. Mais quand les États-Unis, quand l'OTAN parle de 2% de notre PNB consacré à la défense, en réalité, ça ne devrait pas être un plafond, mais un plancher. Nous avons été capables de faire beaucoup plus dans le passé. Et aujourd'hui, il y a deux économies de guerre, la Russie et l'Ukraine. Nous ne sommes même pas entrés dans des économies de soutien à la guerre. Nous en avons les moyens et nous devons et nous pouvons faire davantage. Plusieurs d'entre vous ont parlé de l'importance de la coopération entre l'OTAN et l'Union européenne. Je ne peux qu'aller dans leur sens et espérer que l'OTAN continuera à aller dans ce sens aussi, voir qu'elle mettra ses discours en œuvre, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de belles déclarations communes Union européenne-OTAN, et il y a un manque de coopération parfois sur le terrain qui peut surprendre. Quand la mission navale Irini en mer Méditerranée ne peut pas dialoguer avec la mission de l'OTAN Sea Guardian parce qu'un allié de l'OTAN, la Turquie, le refuse, ça n'est pas de la coopération entre l'OTAN et l'Union européenne, c'est de la défiance les uns vis-à-vis des autres. Et tant qu'on n'aura pas réglé ce genre de difficultés, ce sera difficile d'aller de l'avant, mais il faut aller de l'avant. Et les efforts qui sont faits par l'Union européenne en matière de mobilité militaire, même s'ils sont encore insuffisants, sont une bonne réponse à ces intérêts conjoints entre l'OTAN et l'Union européenne. Moi, je pousse, comme d'autres, pour un Schengen militaire, puisque la seule chose aujourd'hui qui peine à circuler librement dans notre Union, ce sont les troupes et les équipements militaires, ce qui est quand même un paradoxe. J'ai entendu notre collègue turc s'étonner que nous ayons nous-mêmes des étonnements et des inquiétudes vis-à-vis de la Turquie. Moi, j'écoute et je lis avec attention les déclarations du président Erdogan et je m'étonne quand il s'en prend à certains dirigeants de l'Union européenne de la part d'un pays qui se dit toujours candidat, mais qui a fait tous les choix pour s'éloigner de l'adhésion à l'Union européenne. Ce sont des choix souverains que je respecte, mais je suis moins d'accord quand des insultes sortent de la bouche d'un dirigeant, d'un allié de l'OTAN contre des dirigeants européens. S'agissant de la déclaration du président de la République française, vous ne m'en voudrez pas de répondre aux députés du Rassemblement national que décidément il est une illustration parfaite de ce dont je parlais dans mon propos introductif, c'est-à-dire de l'ingérence dans la Russie, dans nos démocraties et de la proximité des extrêmes droites en Europe avec la Russie de Vladimir Poutine. Monsieur François est plus prompt à critiquer le président de son pays qu'à blâmer Vladimir Poutine pour l'agression de l'Ukraine par la Russie. C'est dommage, mais c'est son choix. Quant à parler d'escalade, là aussi, l'escalade est venue de la Russie du premier jour. Le parti de M. François ne voulait pas qu'on livre des armes parce que ce serait de l'escalade, pas des armes lourdes parce que ce serait de l'escalade, pas de missiles parce que ce serait de l'escalade. En réalité, le parti de M. François ne voulait qu'on ne fasse rien pour aider l'Ukraine. Ça n'est pas une surprise et heureusement que nous ne l'avons pas écouté. Quant aux réactions aux propos du président de la République, j'écoute en priorité ceux qui savent, les experts militaires et les pays qui sont proches géographiquement de la Russie, notamment les pays baltes et l'Ukraine, qui le félicitent et qui s'en réjouissent. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Madame Loiseau. General Brieger.
Thank you, and I can concur with most statements here during this discussion. I understand there was no question directly put to me, but I would like to sum up with some procedures and necessities from my point of view. Yes, we have to have in the European Union eased procedures. We have to have a swifter decision-making process, and we have for the military sphere the necessity of a minimum military organization for command and control a growing number of missions and operations, and preparing a growing number of work strands in order to enhance European common defense and security policy. We need more pragmatism. We need incentives for member states to participate within exercises, to participate within operations and missions in the interest of the European Union. These incentives could be financial ones, but also could be the perspective of a better cooperation. I think decision makers should strive for a political agreement on a common strategy. Europe is a union of 27 sovereign states. It's clear that there are different angles you can look upon a problem, but it's also clear that there is now an overwhelming interest to identify common goals and to identify means and ways to become and remain a credible security provider. So beyond shared values, we shouldn't abandon. We have to identify our common interests, and we have to provide the means and the organization to protect these interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Brieger. And the last speaker is Admiral Hoffman.
Yeah, well, very shortly, because a lot has been said.
we realize that actually military is only one of the instruments of power next to diplomacy, economics, informational domain. But if you want to have an effect, if you want that it plays its role to reinforce, in fact, the EU role role that the EU wants to play in the world, you should develop indeed a strong and robust military instrument as well. I've been in the armed forces since very long. It was another century. But since the beginning, I am absolutely convinced of the strength of cooperation. Since the beginning, I grew up in a navy which was integrated with another navy, and since many decades, I see all the benefits of what cooperation can bring. And in the last 10 years that I'm in a position to influence a little bit more, I advocate more cooperation for Europe defense in general. I think there is a lot of potential. I used to say also that cooperating doesn't hurt. It's just a question of attitude, political will, and go for it and act definitely. And there's no time to waste anymore. Thank you very much.
Wise words to conclude. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our session. Thanks to you all for your interventions, but also thanks to the three experts, and I will recommend to give them a warm applause.